So this video is about extending the life of your trolling motor. And this is pretty much true for any trolling motor out there, at least all the ones I've seen. I've done this to probably 4 or 5 over the years. And the way I discovered this was probably about 12, 13 years ago. I was out running my boat and the trolling motor just died. And it was a Minn Kota 50-pound motor, I believe. So I got it back home, tore it apart, and what I found is this whole bottom unit was full of water. So I took a look at why it was full of water, and it's pretty obvious why. There's so many places where water can intrude inside these units that really aren't sealed very well. So what I've done since then, and actually that one, I fully took it apart, I cleaned all the corrosion out of it, removed all the water, and cleaned it up, and I actually still have that motor and it still runs good. So really the main thing to do is you need to seal these things up to keep water out. You got to keep out water of all kinds, and there's a lot of places where water gets in, and it's really surprising that they don't do this from the factory. And it also makes me wonder the freshwater versions versus the seawater versions. I've never taken apart a seawater version, but for sure the freshwater versions, when you take these apart, you can tell that, you know, not a lot of thought went into how you're going to keep water out of these over the long term. So what I did basically is after I took the first one apart, I discovered usually we've got this motor housing here that houses the magnets and such. And what you need to do is, on a brand new motor, this is a brand new motor by the way, it's a Edge 45. And I'll show some other videos of how I'm going to mount this on my John boat. But you've got, when you take out the 2 end screws, this piece comes out, armature in the middle with magnets. This comes out, and then you've got the back where it mounts in and the wires go up. But there's a seam right here and a seam right here. And basically what you want to do on both of these is coat them with RTV. I use Permatex RTV. I use the black on the outside here just so it blends in a little bit more. Now what I do is I just put my finger and I just run it around until I see that seam all the way around is completely filled. And I do the same here. Another popular spot I've noticed that sometimes develops cracks, and it's another source, is right here. So I went around here the same way with the silicone. Now you could probably use marine grade like 5200 or 4200, but I've only seen that in white. That wouldn't look too good on here. And this has held up really well, you know, on my other motors, especially the one I did so many years ago. It still runs great and it's holding up. So once you do there, do around there, and then on the end, you're going to see you've got these usually 2 screws. And these are the ones you take out to take this apart if you ever want to change the brushes or just service the inside and see what's going on. So what you want to do is you want to put the RTV around those. And so there's no way water can get under those screws. And then you've got a seal right around here. So I go all the way around that seal, but what I do is I keep it slightly away from the armature. And what's going to go in there is going to be marine grade grease. And that'll hopefully keep, just do one more barrier of protection to keep any water intrusion to come out through this armature center seal where it's going through this little bearing. So those 2 spots there, go around here. Right there, right there, right there. And this pretty much takes care of this lower unit. And like I say, when you add the grease to the center of the armature shaft there, that's going to keep out a lot of possibility of water getting in there. And every once in a while you should take the prop off anyways. And when you do, just pack more grease in there. Okay, now I'm going to show you the other spot I found. Okay, so the other thing you're going to want to do is take apart the control head, because there's a major flaw with the design. And what that is this tube that goes right down to the motor is totally open. So any water that gets in from rain or however, because you know this is a tiller model that I have, and there's a lot of opportunity for water to get in, you know, from splashes or rain, and it just if it does get in here, it's just going to go right down this tube. I mean, there's some drain holes around here. I guess it depends on how much water it gets in, but it's a perfect opportunity, even for moisture, you know, to get down there. So again, on my motors, I seal this up, and I've never had a problem. Even here where the battery comes in, your battery connections, I don't like things to move around and wiggle a lot because that's not good for electrical connections. So I just seal this one off too, and it just basically keeps it from moving. So this, this control head is actually easy to take apart. They're really simple. This one here has 4 screws. Just take those 4 screws out, it pops apart, and you see the control mechanism that's in here. Everything's wired to. On this model, everything's labeled. It's really easy to put it back together. On yours, you might want to make sure that it's labeled, and if it isn't, go ahead and label it, and it'll be easy to put back together. The other thing I like to do on these, when I do put it back together, is all these electrical connections. You're going to want to squeeze these down a little bit. Even when I took these off, there's 2 of them that just fell off because they're really, from the factory, weren't put on very well. They really needed to tighten these up a little bit. Just take a pair of pliers, squeeze it down a little bit, put a little bit of dielectric grease on these spades, slide it on, and once you get it on, take some more dielectric grease and coat everything that is exposed. I mean, you could even put heat shrink on here if you want, but I don't think you really need to. The dielectric grease has always done a great job. This is the one I use. It works really well, not too expensive. Dielectric grease is dielectric grease. There's a marine grade one, but I've never seen any difference using that versus this. It just to me seems like it's a little more expensive, but this dielectric grease has done the job over the years for me. And the sealant I use is the Permatex silicone RTV. I use black for the motor section at the bottom, just so it looks better. And I use clear inside here. So there it is right there. You can just, with that, I already did this, but obviously if this silicone wasn't here, you'd just see a straight shot right down there. And just, you could fill that motor up in a second if you wanted to. All right, well, putting it back together is really easy. Just put it back together the same way it came apart. Even the ones with the foot controller that I've seen, it's a very similar mechanism. It's really easy to do. And I venture to say that possibly the difference between the saltwater and the freshwater versions of these motors is how they're sealing the motor up, trying to keep the water out. Another trick I do in the ones that I run in the saltwater sometimes is I put a sacrificial anode on there, and I'll do another video on how I do that. And like I say, I've had those motors for over 10 years and they run great. So doing this, putting an anode down on the bottom, so you don't get any galvanic corrosion, and these things work great. The downside to the freshwater versus the saltwater is the mounting mechanisms. Like on the one I have for this, it's all, I think, just zinc screws and bolts, and you replace those with stainless steel, and that problem goes away. It's really the construction, I think, of the mount, and then just a little extra work they put into sealing up these units to keep moisture out, because moisture really is what gets it. And for some reason, that seawater likes to creep, and it gets into things, and obviously in combination with any corrosion you get, and that's what the anode does. So, like I said, this has worked well for me over the years. I've done this so many times, and I've never had any trouble at all. So maybe you can give this a shot and get a little extra life out of your trolling motors. And if any questions, let me know. But I think it's pretty straightforward. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Take care. Hey, thanks for watching. Please subscribe.